Welcome to our second in the series, The Heroes of Griffin. Today we're pleased to have as our guest Sergeant Major Horace Pearl, who was in the 82nd Airborne Division during World War II. He holds the record for the most combat parachute jumps. And we welcome you today, Sergeant Major Pearl.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask you to begin, were you part of the D-Day invasion?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now you actually were part of the advance forces, weren't you?
Right. We parachuted in about 1 o'clock in the morning. I think the beach forces came in about 5 hours later.
Okay. So what was your job, to go in and do what?
To block the Germans from going towards the beaches and to cut communications.
Okay, so you were actually between the beaches and where the Germans were as a...
Where the German reinforcements were. Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when you said communications, what was that? What part did you play in that?
Well, to narrate through the day, the first day of D-Day, we parachuted in about 1 o'clock in the middle of the night, and I managed to assemble most of my platoon, and we went right through the center of town. And as we went through the town, we looked at the utility poles, and there were American GIs hanging off them. The Germans had a headquarters in there, and when we jumped, they left. And those people that were snagged on the utility poles, they fired at with automatic weapons and killed them. I checked each one and they were all dead. I also saw one guy hanging off a church steeple. And I thought he was dead, but he wasn't. He was just playing dead because Germans would have gotten him. But we went on through town, and the Germans had set up trenches on the outside of the town and for their protection. And when we chased them out of the town, we took those positions over. Saved us a lot of digging.
What town?
Sainte-Mère-Église.
Okay.
And after we got situated in our defensive positions, then the German artillery started pounding us for about 5 days. And we had some losses in there, and they counterattacked. They tried to take the town back, and of course we repelled them each time. And one German truck, an ammunition truck, must have gotten lost and came down that road, and we turned loose with everything we had, and they were fireworks like you've never seen because everything blew up, you know. And about the 5th day, I saw some tanks in the distance, and being a parachutist infantryman, I didn't know one tank from another. But I had one man with me who had been in a tank unit. I handed him my binoculars. I said, "What are they, ours or theirs?" He looked at them through the binoculars, and they were ours. And then he handed me my binoculars back. He caught a rifle bullet right through the neck. It was interesting because it came out of an open window in a house. And I called a bazooka man over to put a round through that window. And when they ran up to check to see what was up there, it was a woman with a rifle. She had been killed. She was a lover of a German soldier that had been stationed in that town. We joined the attack then after the land forces contacted us, and we started to cut across the Cherbourg Peninsula. I stayed with the unit until the 4th of July, and I got wounded. As I was hit in the leg and in the arm, and the lieutenant was next to me, and he got killed. He caught one right through his back, and he went down and never got up again. After that, of course, I was hospitalized. I was on my back for about 6 weeks with splints and everything, and I healed up enough to get out in time to jump into Holland. We were supposed to outflank the Siegfried line that Hitler had set up, but it wasn't too effective. The British were caught on the other side of a river, and they were almost wiped out with German armor. Later on, the Battle of the Bulge came along, and this was Hitler's Christmas gift. They were going to take Paris back, and they didn't get very far.
Oh, you stopped them?
Yeah, well, I didn't, but I was part of it. Patton, of course, with his tanks, and we went into position. And I got wounded again on Christmas Eve. and it was evacuated. And I thought that when the war ended, that we'd have peace for a while, but that wasn't true. The Korean War started, and I made 2 combat jumps in Korea. And I was knocked off a tank. I was wounded again in Korea. In all, I was hit 4 times.
Mm-hmm. Where was the 4th wound? When?
In Korea. The fourth one was Holland.
Okay.
And then later on, 5 years later, 2 more in Korea.
Okay. Okay. So you were in D-Day, the Battle of the Bulge, Korea, and then you have a total of how much service?
23 years.
22 years.
Yeah,
Because you came, are you originally from Griffin?
No.
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 How did you settle in Griffin?
Well, the job brought me here.
Okay.
There was a listing, and I had a choice between Atlanta and here. And Griffin opened up first, thank God, because I didn't want to go to Atlanta, too big a city, you know.
5 children.
Well, let me ask you, the Battle of the Bulge, not a lot has been said about that in comparison to Omaha Beach and Utah Beach. Speaking of Omaha Beach, did you ever get right to the beach to look down and see what was happening? No?
No,
Okay.
I never. Matter of fact, we turned in the opposite direction
Did
from
you?
the beach.
Okay.
Once the beach forces caught up with us, it took them a while to get to us.
Okay. Well, the Battle of the Bulge, though, tell me something about that. Pretend I know nothing about it. Tell me a little bit about it. What was the purpose? What was the main thing about it?
Okay, Hitler was losing the war badly, and this was going to be his last stab at trying to regain what he had lost. And he didn't make it. We just overwhelmed him. He did break through, but we let him come. We let him come as far as we dared, and then we stopped it. We built up against his assailant. And once we got him stopped in this V, then Patton came through with his tanks and cut him off. And then it was just about the end of the war.
Did you ever get to meet Patton personally and talk with him?
No, I've seen him. I've served under him. But he was a pretty hard apple, from what I understand.
Tell me what most of the GIs felt about him.
Well, I think a lot of them feared him. More than anything else, they were afraid of what he might do if they didn't succeed in what they were told to do, you see.
But wouldn't you have rather had a leader like that, a strong one?
Sure, he gets the job done. It might be costly, but the job gets done.
Okay. Now, if you don't want to answer this one, you don't have to, but tell us, since you went in a little bit before the forces on Omaha Beach and Utah Beach, and you were one of the first ones to go in, what were some of your feelings about that, Sergeant Major Pearl?
Well, I think if anybody says they weren't afraid, they're lying. Maybe it's not fear, but you get sort of butterflies in your stomach, especially just before you go out. You imagine jumping out of an airplane in the middle of the night in the darkness. And, of course, in some cases, before you get on the coast, the flak guns open up and they try to knock the airplanes down. It's not a question of fear so much, as I say, as butterflies in your stomach when you have to go. Now, when we jumped over Sicily, the German bombers had been bombing the Navy down there with their battleships. And when they took off, our 504th Regiment came in behind them. And our Navy thought it was still the Germans with their bombing run. They shot 28 planes out by mistake.
Our planes?
Our planes. That was the biggest mistake, I think, of the war. Of course, in every war you have these kind of mistakes. But it's a shame because it took out a whole battalion of men.
But would you participate, would you be willing to participate in World War II again if need be?
I'm glad I went through it, and I'm glad I lived through it, but I don't think I'd want to do it again. Now, if the situation were the same, yes, I would go. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes. So what did you feel was the purpose of D-Day?
Well,
I know you explained a little bit about it in the beginning, but I'm thinking in terms of the French and the others over there.
I think D-Day was the turning point of that war. We were taking Hitler's territory back bit by bit before that. North Africa, we took Sicily, we took Italy. Matter of fact, the day we jumped into D-Day, our forces took Rome. So we had a sort of a two-pronged attack. And it developed a second front to relieve the Russians from the German onslaught. And when Germany had to divide their forces then, one towards Russia and one towards us. So they didn't have all that might to throw in one direction, you see.
Well, I'm going to ask you one last question, and you say whatever you please. How do you feel about your service for your country?
Oh, I'm proud of it. If I had to do all over again, I would.
You'd do it again?
Yep.
Even if it meant 4 Purple Hearts again?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was worth it. And of course, the cause that we always fight for, the freedom, and that's why our country's free today.
My husband's very patriotic.
Your husband's very patriotic.
Certainly
And you're
is.
proud of him.
I sure am.
Well, thank you for coming and being our guest
It was a
today.
pleasure.
Well, it was my pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
The man with the most combat parachute jumps, you see. My husband had an airborne patch.
Oh, did he?
Yes. So, and thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you for asking me.
Okay, sit still a second.
Sit
Okay.
still for a minute.
Put on your boots and parachute, shoot, shoot. We're going up, up, up. We're coming down, down, down. Put on your American proud to be boots and parachute, shoot, 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 shoot. We're going up, 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 we're coming down, 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 down. Put on your we're all American fight. We will boots and parachute, all the guns shall not throw until get ready. Airborne from Canada, land in the door. Make you don't take your country. Let's go, put on your boots, jump in with your parachute. Get on the gliders, ready to attack today. Hook up or we'll be gone. Back into the dawn, back to fight them all.